What you're about to hear is a conversation with Gabe from Helmgast about running Kult Divinity Lost. We invited him to share his experience and perspective as a game designer and GM, and to talk through how the game works at the table. This discussion assumes that you, the listener or viewer, have at least some prior experience with GMing role-playing games. We are not presenting this as a step-by-step tutorial or a classroom-style teaching session. Instead, this is a practical, conversational deep dive into mechanics, intent, and how GM and player moves function in actual play. Now, with that in mind, let's get into the conversation. Hello and welcome back to the Illusion Horror and Con YouTube channel, where we are talking to Gabe the Herald about game mastering for Kult Divinity Lost. This is we're calling this season 2 of our series for GMing Kult. And this is episode 2 of season 2. And we're going to be talking about running scenarios, running pre-made scenarios, and maybe a little bit of writing your own scenarios as well. Joining us, as always, is Gabe the Herald.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. And David, also part of the Illusion Horror and Con. Let's get started. What do you have to say about running pre-published scenarios or pre-made scenarios, Gabe?
Okay. So, getting right into it. I feel like game masters should know that there's different scenarios. Ones that are super, strict in their structure. So scene by scene, you have pre-gen characters, and you should, in theory, run those scenes and in sequence, or try your best to do that. Then you have, and this would be, for example, Oakwood Heights. You have 3 locations. And what happens in the location, it's up for you to decide. But you have the structure there. You go to this location, and then you go to that location. There are stricter scenarios, I think, and then there are more loose structures out there. For example, Black Skies over Brixton, we focused on creating a campaign framework. So you have different ways to tackle the main problem. You have a description of the main location of the story, and then other locations in the area that you can go to explore and see what comes up. But then we don't write NPCs or scenes as they should be presented. They're more like guidance. So you have David, and David might come into the story through this, and that, and do this, and that,
Mm-hmm.
And these don't have a predetermined, scene structure you should follow, but they do have a strong start, and they do have a frame to build a character in the scenario world. But they don't have a defined ending to them. And then we also have horror starters that focus on being a initial setup. You get to build a character on the spot, and the story also on the spot. So we present questions that the GM can ask the players as the session begins, like right away. And answering the questions, they are also part of the game. I feel like if you go to structured scenarios, you want to do the scene by scene. You want this kind of preparation and having the certainty that something will happen in the story when they do this and that. In campaign frameworks, you have more like this wide preparation style for GMs. Most people would prepare the campaign through bullet points, but Black Skies over Brixton, the idea is that you have full descriptions that you can draw from. And Horror Starters is for the improvisers. We don't offer much, at least for most of them, we don't offer much explanations and the reasonings behind what's happening, because anything can happen. If you have 3 questions with 3 answers each, then all kinds of things can happen. And most of the horror starters, at least the ones released in Broken Reflections, they have way more than, than 3 questions. But an example would be The Driver, also available for free. Black Skies over Brixton and Oakwood Heights are also free. And then there are those that fall like in the middle of each type of scenario. So Together Unto Death, you have predetermined scenes, but more like beats in the story. And then you have complementary scenes that you can place in between those. So you do what you want, so long the main structure gets, the spotlight.
I would put Judgment and The Shunned in this category as well.
Yeah. Most campaigns, at least those released so far, like Scarlet Bride. Well, Scarlet Bride is rather open. It's more, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a whole part of it that you draw cards, well, most of it, and see what happens, see what kinds of scenes you run. But these are also written. The characters, the concepts at least, are also pre-generated. And then you have Black Madonna, that is like typical railroady epic campaign, Taroticum as well. But yeah, the idea is that like each writer has this vision of how you should play their story, and they bring the vision to the pages. They write how they want people to experience that. So there's no like ideal or cult type of scenario writing that you can reference. It's each writer bringing their vision. I am known to create super open like frameworks like Black Skies over Brixton, Heart of an Angel. This one has more structure. I divided the campaign in 3 acts. And there's a lot that can happen in each of the acts, but you also have like scenes for that. But for Brixton, you don't have scenes. You just you play it as you would in the real game. You improvise your way through. Prepare for when you want to introduce characters and all that.
So with this rough overlook, I think one of the main considerations here should be, can you maybe outline a bit the difference in the scenarios that are meant for like individual like one shots and those that are medium length between like 3 to 5 sessions, and then those that are campaign length? How do they differ in the writing as well as in the preparation for the GMs when they read those?
Yeah, the shorter the scenario, I have to remind myself of the pronunciation. The shorter it is, the more direct you'll find the writing. So for bigger ones, the idea is that the writer gets to expand on the scenes a bit more and add more context. because as the story develops, you'll get to see a lot of stuff, and you get to return to the same places a bunch of times, and then it helps to have this better explanation of things. But for shorter ones, usually you get to one location and then you don't return, so you go from one to the other. Like Gallery of Souls, I think it's pretty railroady. And you have a location, you have the clues, and then you move on. And then you have a location, and then you have the clues, and then you move on. And you don't.
Yeah.
The way you prepare for them, I think that for one shots, you can take it as is and get ready to. They try to see like some pitfalls where your players specifically might do something different, because we know the people we run games to, or so I hope. And you have this idea of what they would like to see, perhaps, in the game. And so you can, they would hate this guy. They wouldn't kill him, but they would do something worse. Okay, then you can try to think of what could happen. Oh, but they would spare this one character. They wouldn't like to kill them. Okay, then you can think about it. Same would go for anything else, like exploring a specific place, activating an artifact. You can sort of foresee where they would be, more into or not, or aversive to certain ideas, and take mental notes of that, or write down what you want to do instead. But I feel like the general approach to running scenarios is you read it, you get an idea of it first. You can even scheme like only headers and see what's up, see the images if you like them, see the black boxes if they have like a small text that draws your attention. See if you vibe with it. Maybe read the overview of the story and then jump to the ending, see if that's, just have a general idea. And then you go back and read everything and take notes, and as you would with any other book or adventure module, whatever, in any game. And then you run. You see what you want to run. You see what you want to extract out of it. And you do. You might not run the full scenario as it is written, but you can do like the starting scenes and see where it leads. Or you can keep the beginning and the end and do whatever you want to develop towards the ending. You can keep the main ideas. I've talked to people that used the Black Skies Over Brixton background to run a mage game. Mage the Ascension, that is. So, I mean, it's out there. You do what you want with it.
Yeah.
But my idea writing the stuff I do is that I want to offer a strong foundation for you to get to play and see clearly where the story should go. So that's for like Black Skies Over Brixton, that's for Unto Death, that's for Heart of an Angel, and now the Cockroach campaign framework thing. There should be something in there that tells you, I have to go there. I can go there. And then you already have it like written up, like some events and all that. The Hour of the Flame, soon to be released, is like this as well. You have a main conflict, and you have all the characters written up, all the locations, all the everything. But you can just pick one location and run a full story in it. And if you wanted to bring the Hour of the Flame into the campaign, you can do that, because it's already there,
Yeah.
So that's the idea, the foundation of things. But how do you prepare for epic campaigns? I don't know. I don't really run epic campaigns, but I know David does and has a full guidance on running the Black Madonna that I know has a bunch of tips for running scenarios in general.
Mm.
But what do you do to prepare for games? I know that you two run a bunch of scenarios. I know Crystal has game mastered the Shunned a trillion times by now.
Yeah.
I know David has ran or is running, I guess, like Black Madonna 2 times. Like for two
This is the
different
second
groups.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. I ran Oakwood Heights 2 times, but that's how
Yeah.
far I go with scenarios. I mostly read them, edit them, get them into the structure, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. So like you were saying, I read the scenario completely, cover to cover, to understand it and make sure I know what's going on. I basically make note of the goal of the scenario, like what are you trying to get the players or the player characters to? What is the ultimate thing that they're supposed to discover? What are they supposed to what is the ending, proposed ending of the scenario? And then yeah, sometimes I make notes on like what are the things that get to that goal. And I mean, if it's a more open structure scenario, published scenario, I kind of just let the players do what they want. And then I maybe have a list, or I know, I have it marked in the scenario, what are the specific things that they need, evidence, clues, people to talk to, locations that they have to go to, like things that need to happen in the scenario. I have those marked, and then let the players kind of do their thing with what I've presented them. And then if they don't specifically go to the places that are in the scenario, and they go somewhere else, then I put clues and other things somewhere else and make sure they get the information they need to get to the goal that they want, or the goal that the scenario dictates.
Do you adapt
yeah.
to like different? So going off rails, right? You adapt to it on the spot.
Yeah. Sometimes, and then if players really do something wild that I did not anticipate, I might tell them like, okay, I need like 5 to 10 minutes to think about what's going on. Or if we've played a couple hours already, I would say, okay, how about we end here with your action so that I can think about how to, I can have a downtime to think about how to connect these things. So like, you don't always have to, be Johnny on the spot with all of your improvisation. There's been many times where I've told players, I'm like, so you've done something a little off the wall, and that's okay. Give me 10 minutes, and then and then we'll get back to it.
That's nice. I feel like a good starter point for that would be Together Unto Death, because you have like 2 player characters, and all that needs to happen. And there's hooks for the main scenes. So one naturally leads to the other. But the idea is that you get to the secondary scenes, like the complementary ones. And I feel like that's a good exercise because you have all there.
Yeah.
And you don't need to improvise as much. It's more like, how can I fit this scene in here between this and that?
Yeah.
And how can I lead them to that place? So the people listening that want to try to expand this improvisation thing and going along, like going with the flow of the game, I feel like that's a good place to begin. More so because it's only 2 players. So
Yeah. Less players is definitely easier to run and maintain and also improv for.
and easier to manage out of character.
Yes.
If something crazy happens, it's easier to talk to 2 people that you trust
Mhm.
and say that, yeah, this is unexpected.
Yeah.
But also less things to read because the scenes are super focused, so you don't have to memorize anything. And I might be remembering them, in a different light, but how they are in my mind, they are super quick to read. Not the main ones. The main ones I remember being longer, but the secondary scenes, they are like super tight, like more like
Mhm.
ideas that you can bring into the game. But that's a nice place to start.
Yeah.
And it's also a quick game. I would say that if you have 2 main scenes per session, that's a fast game. Ideally, if you want a slower pace, like slow burn, you would get like 1 main scene per game and then really, get to it and explore it and feel it and let the characters, the players also explore spoiler alert, they develop supernatural abilities for a reason. And and you should let them explore it.
Yeah.
See what about them is becoming this thing. And yeah, 1 main scene per session. I run 2-hour sessions. I know that's on the shorter end usually, but for a 4-hour session, 1 main scene is good. So you can, even if you don't run it, you can read it using this lens, and you get an idea. But how do you say when you look at a scenario that it's a short one, right? How do you get to this conclusion? It's a bit difficult to gauge,
I mean,
feel like
this mostly comes with experience, I would say. There's and just briefly also to just say, because I want to kind of explore this a bit later in detail, because I think it's a very important element about running pre-written scenarios. In my preparation, I pretty much do the same. I read the scenario, I take the core elements, I know roughly the group. We have we have a conversation, we have the expectation set, what type of game we want to play, or what type of game I want to play, and then it's pretty much writing down the core characters that are important for the scenario, maybe the location or like items or elements that are kind of required. But otherwise, I pretty much go with the flow and with what I remember of the themes and kind of core premise of the story. If you consider Awkward Heights, it's about uncovering the truth about a murderer, if you want to say so, or like try to get him to reveal information, and what then happens is kind of a consequence. With campaigns, it's definitely different, and you're free to check out our cult guide for the Black Madonna, where we discuss in details how scenes can be enhanced, how they can be manipulated and adjusted from the actual core way that it's written. Because ultimately, it depends on what type of storytelling you want to do, right? There is the strict by the book. You want to convey the story the way that you've written it or that somebody wrote it down. and you want to bring it as close to as his imagination to the players. That's one way to do it. It's probably taking more effort and more dedication to the details, I would call it, in the preparation. And then there's kind of my approach on the opposite end, where it's all ours, I guess, collectively. We have a good idea of the premise. We know roughly what characters are there, and it kind of will flow that way, but it's primarily driven by the characters. And I would say there's nothing wrong with either. There's also just the idea that you just figure out what works best for you. If you're first-time GM, it might be better to stick closer to things that are written and maybe pick a scenario where there is a bit more detailed GM instructions, like how to set scenes or where to transition from there, what questions to ask. If you have more experience, if you also know more to the lore, the mechanics, and you're more confident with that, you can adapt and change. And when we consider the preparation aspects, I think we had a panel at the last HorrorCon, or one of the various HorrorCons, where we discussed pretty much this with various panelists, and it always depends. Some of the GMs or storytellers, they need 5 to 10 pages equal to the scenario length, sometimes in notes, before they are happy to run a scenario. I'm okay with a single line to remind me about including something that I always forget.
Couldn't be me.
Yeah. So there is always, I think there is no correct guide. The most important thing is, I would say, if you read a scenario and you can tell the next day to yourself what happens in the game or in that adventure, then you can run it the way that you remember it. It will be good enough, and it will be a good story focused base, because at least in my opinion, in my personal way of running games, the players will drive 95% of the stories. I will throw in some hurdles, I will change and adapt certain elements, but I don't want the players to be railroaded into specific decision makings that if they don't want to make them, or if they have more clever ideas to circumvent them. So that's why I'm not really reading scenarios too closely. I read them as an inspiration, I would suppose. And I tip my hat to those that are running scenarios as close to the foundation as possible, but it's definitely not in my wheelhouse. And it takes a bit of time and practice.
I agree that if you listener is new to this, that you should go for scenarios that have a stronger GM guidance. Hence my tip of running Unto Death. It has those things. It has detailed descriptions of scenes, text that you can read to the players during the game, so you don't have to super think of setting up this weird dream that they have, It has each of the main scenes has the main objective listed and how do you get to those, scenes. So the hook and main objective. So it's easier to manage, to handle.
Yeah.
The upcoming Children of the Fire revisited for Divinity Lost and soon to be released in Exiled Terrors. I don't like to bring super shadowy releases like this because Exiled Terrors won't reach retail.
Yeah.
But it also has somewhat of this. It's a different structure. Very much a wild, weird story, but it has kind of this, lead the players to this can happen if this other thing doesn't happen. And a structure, like a loose structure that you can follow. But I agree that scenarios for me, I know it's counterintuitive for me to say it like this. I think like the ideal pronunciation here would say that I run all of the stuff and I know all of the scenarios by heart. But I don't. More so the old ones, like previous to my entrance on Helmgast. But the new ones, I've read it all. I lay out them. The Scarlet Bride and Broken Reflections all have my touch somehow.
Yeah.
And I don't run them. But I know how to run them. I read them. I edit them. I know what makes a good scenario, hopefully, or that's what I like to believe. And and hence, if you like them, thank you, I guess. But Heart of an Angel is more mine than all others.
Yeah. Getting back to your previous question of how to determine the scenario length. I agree that it does. It comes to experience and also sort of the number of locations, the depth of the story. So if you have a story that is, there's like 2 or more adversaries, the player characters, the goal of it is trying to figure out what sort of like intrigue or what sort of stuff is happening between a couple different adversaries or people, fighting against each other or factions fighting against each other. It's a pretty in-depth story. So that's not going to be a one-shot. And a one-shot to me would be 1 to 2 locations, a main adversary, and you probably have pre-gens because you can't really get into you kind of have to have the characters, the player characters figured out beforehand, and then you drop them into a situation. And this is also where expectations come in, and you say to your players beforehand, like, I want this to be a one shot, especially if you're in like a convention sort of scenario. Like, this is going to be a one shot, 4 hours. I will have to railroad you if you're taking too long somewhere. I will have to move you along. I will have to make you go somewhere else. But yeah, that just comes with, the setting expectations. And yeah, otherwise, just having more experience of running stuff. And it also depends on the GM too. I think David mentioned this as well. Because there are certain people that when I play a game with certain GMs, I'm like, okay, this story is going to take at least twice as long as I would think it would take, because this particular GM is very detailed, very in-depth. They want to take their time. They want a slow burn. They want this, that, and the other, as opposed to other GMs where I'm like, okay, this is probably going to take, a couple sessions. We'll get to what we need to get to and whip it out, Yeah, I think you have to take into consideration, you kind of have to be self-aware about what kind of GM you are. Maybe ask players too, like if you want the feedback. But yeah, a little bit of self-awareness about what kind of GM you are and reading the scenario critically in order to, if you really need to understand how many sessions there are. if you don't, like if you just have a group that wants to play, every other week and it just goes how long it goes, then maybe don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, this thing you said about being self-aware, I think it's painful to be self-aware at sometimes, because you
true.
can be running a game and thinking, oh my god, I'm taking too long to reveal something, and then you sort of get too into your head. But you have to know how long you take to set up a scene and develop a problem, and how easy it is for you to manage the mechanics. So that's for all of the games, but for Kult, you should have a strong grasp of, do I know how to use the mechanics to my, to serve my goal here? Because if you already take long to set up a scene and you already take long to develop a problem, so let's say setting up a scene would be Crystal and David getting to this abandoned warehouse. And me setting it up would be describing the weather, the warehouse, and when they get in. And me developing a problem is, how long does it take for me to say that there's an angel here that they have to kill, and getting to the killing angel point of the scene,
Right.
And it varies from GM to GM. What I try my best to do, and I know I fail a lot of the times, is I like to make locations like sort of known throughout the game, so we can return to the locations without me going over their description like again and again and again. It's difficult. I've been running games in English now. It's more difficult in English because, I have to think of words that I'm not super used to. Phrases, it seems. But I know in Portuguese, I set up a strong scene within so-and-so minutes, and then I go back to that scene. So for my Blade Runner, out of the blue right now, for my Blade Runner game that I'm running now, I've already described what the streets look like. And we're going to the streets again next session. I won't do the same thing. I won't say the same things. So that's what you have to know. Because when you read the scenario and you realize that this location won't reappear in the story, you should know that, I take around 10 minutes to set up the scene, ask the players what they are thinking, wearing, what they want to do, and then I take 1 hour to develop the problem, because I have to go into this place, explore the place, talk to someone, and then see what's wrong with the place, and then it'll be like 1 to 3 hours, and it's 30 minutes per scene. Oh yeah, this location will take a full session. So if you do it like that, when I ran Oakwood Heights for the first time, it took me 13 hours. And I came out of it and talked to people, and they were running it for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Running Oakwood Heights at conventions, running it for, impromptu games on a Saturday night that no one wants to hang out at a bar, so so clearly I was different there. But it's maybe you have to be self-aware. That's that's the idea.
And even beyond self-awareness, since Cult is very different in that style, and as we mentioned before, it's also, what type of narrative do you want to drive? If you narrate stories in a very old-fashioned way, where you describe, you come to the police station, it's old, it's abandoned, you get in and you talk to Detective so-and-so. That is less than a minute to set up police station, because assuming that everybody has seen or watched TV how a police station looked like, you don't need much description. But since Cult is very focused on description of subtle elements, or at least how
Atmospheric.
I interpret it, atmospheric. If you add those elements, it changes differently. That might be something that you don't want to do. That's fine. Again, as Gabe said, if a location in a scenario is mentioned once and you meet a person there, then it's sometimes wise to just say, like, you meet Detective so-and-so in the police station. You go over the case and you leave. Done. That can be very short. If, however, you want to bring back this detective, or he, follows you after that, maybe setting up a bit of atmosphere about him and the place is helpful. And regarding inspiration too, we are living in a digital age, and there's so much good content out there that you can listen to various podcasts of playthroughs and find the style that you like. There are audio dramas that you can get inspired from. There's actual plays. Might it be just like direct actual plays or full cast productions of actual plays?
Shameless plug of our YouTube channel. We have a lot of actual plays of Kult that you are welcome to steal from. Always be stealing.
And
true.
if you, our colleagues at Red Mineral Role Playing do a pretty good deal with sound and atmospheric elements, almost like a audio drama. And it feels definitely different because they take much more care about, preparing the sessions, the characters. So like, it depends on what you want. And I definitely would say, timing, how long a scenario takes, I would agree. Per location, I would suggest easily estimate about an hour. If you add per NPC, about 15 to 30 minutes.
I would say significant locations.
Yeah, significant locations. Yeah. And yeah, it comes always difficult. One of the things that I did when I started kind of really doing more GMing and more continuous stuff, I first of all, I try to read as many scenarios, whatever system I could find, just to get inspiration about how are location described, how are characters described, because sometimes you find this like beautiful compact way of describing a character in a one-liner, or the Kult GM screen, I think it's called, has this wonderful kind of put together table where you can just see adverbs and descriptive parts for NPCs where you can just like go through and like, oh, done. It is a skill and it takes time. And so what I used to do is when I read a scenario, I either before going to bed or like just sitting somewhere and relaxing, I played the game in my head roughly, like slowly going through it, trying to remember. Because I usually start playing games or scenarios with a group of people that I at least know, especially if I want to run scenarios like on larger places or on recorded elements. I do want to find like a way of running the scenario. Now, running scenarios is always helpful to have that kind of guarded group or that common group, but like it is also not a hindrance. Sometimes it's nice to just play a scenario and see what the people feel like. And if you don't know them, they can be giving you maybe a bit more honest feedback because they don't know you that well, or vice versa. I think the written scenarios have one important thing, and I think that came through as of now. They are a construct, a guideline. They're not really like a step-by-step script that you're supposed to read out. And I wanted to ask, that's my long way of what I mentioned earlier. How do you feel about this? Like, do you need to run a scenario one-to-one as it's written? Or is it okay to leave out NPCs, to change elements, locations, to the extent that either you forgot or you misplaced two NPCs because it was players were acting and you couldn't read too fast or something and you just forgot.
Always be changing. That's the new rule.
Yeah. Agreed.
Players don't know, man. Get to the end of it, run a nice story, and then at the end you can say, "Yeah, I forgot about this one character." But we played Oakwood Heights. I just forgot about the bathtub. It's a pretty cool part of the scenario, and I forgot about it. You can then say all the secrets. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I think the ideal way to run a scenario is to change it to fit your vision. You know, just like when we see a movie, when we read a comic book, and we think, "Oh, I want to run something like this. I want to run, I don't know, Angel Heart, Prisoners. Oh, I want it to be like Millennium." You don't have to redo the entire movie or novel or whatever, but you can be super inspired by it and be stealing characters. It doesn't really matter. But and I see scenarios the same way. You should be vibing with the atmosphere, the intended, you know, mood of the story and intended way things should go, because that's the idea of, being inspired by other media. But I mean, if you read Oakwood Heights and you feel like you should place another location, or it shouldn't be a Nephrite, or it shouldn't be a Purgatory, you should just do it. You should just. And if you want to, I'm not even talking about forgetting, but if you want to just ignore something, you can do that. The way and this is my accumulated experience, I guess. But for the cockroach thing, I have 3 factions, like 3 adversaries, potential adversaries or allies, depending on the characters. And by the end of it, I described what the story can look like without either of them. You can focus only in a single faction. You can focus on 2 factions fighting. You can never mention the third. You can never mention them at all. So that's the whole idea of what I try to bring to the game, right? And even if I have my own ideas during play, I might not do it all. And I think it's okay. So
I feel like a big takeaway from not just this episode, but the series in general is that we give you, the GM, permission to take stories and do what you want with them. That is okay and encouraged, as well as, take what you want from the mechanics and leave the rest. You have our permission. You have permission to run the stories the way you want to run them. If you read a scenario and you're like, man, this has good bones, but a lot of the specific stuff I don't really like, or that NPC bothers me, or the scenario just doesn't make sense the way that it's written to you. So, but you have an idea of how it would make more sense to you or would be more fun for your character, for your players. Do it. Change it, Yeah. Like Gabe said, always be changing. It is fine. And you will be okay to just run things the way that you want to. I just finished up a recording of The Shunned, and I changed a whole lot from what is written in the scenario, just because mostly the players were kind of just doing. I was letting the players do what they wanted to do, and I let them discover stuff in whatever location they decided to go to, and they still got to the ending, the intended ending for the story, but they got their own way, and we actually, had a really good time with doing what we wanted to do with the story. It is okay and encouraged to do that.
Well, let me play a bit advocate here then. So what's the purpose then if you write a scenario and people are changing it full force at the way they wanted to? Why are the scenarios written the way they are then?
Why? Okay, so here's that's a good question, and that's a question that I expect people to ask me on the daily. Actually, I feel like for any kind of art, because writing, even a scenario that is supposed to be a product you bring to play with others, it's got artistic elements on it. First, we want to show people different ways to see the cosmology, implement the cosmology in their games, and prepare and run games. I know that there's a billion ways to run Kult, and I know Petter would sign like his agreement with this. There's a billion ways you can run Kult. You can run Kult using another system. You can ignore large swaths of the cosmology and world building. You can twist the cosmology in a way that is partly older edition and partly newer edition. And then you can fit other games into Kult or Kult in other games, as we've seen people do online for like Mage the Ascension set in the world of Kult, or the infamous Jail of Night that lets you run Vampire the Masquerade in the world of Kult. So the idea is that we show people this is what you can do. So no scenario is canon. No scenario is it doesn't make up this encyclopedia that you can see and Nephrites are like this and ring beans are like that. They have various, they come in various shapes and sizes and all that. And if it's a scenario, that's just an idea. But we want to respect, but when we want to pay this, not respect, I forgot the word, like honor.
Pay homage.
Yeah, we want to honor people's visions of how they see Kult and how they want to run it and write it. And when you release anything, so long it remains untouched, it's yours, right? But the moment someone picks it up and reads it, you have no control of what they're gonna experience with it. You can write the most dramatic and tragic and personal things to you, but someone will pick it up and not see the value or not see how it can touch anyone else but the author, apparently, So you release it and the reader will do what the reader does. I know that people will pick a scenario and read already having ideas for their own games. And they might say they are running the Shunned. But it'll be like, they're just collecting ideas and ways to do stuff. Mm-hmm. So why release a scenario then? Because it's fun. Because people want to write Kult and we want to see more Kult in the world. And we want to show that you can do anything, well, provided you stay within the boundaries of the cosmology of Kult and you're not creating like a new pillar of the setting. But that's the idea.
Yeah.
And obviously, we would like for people to experience the stories as they have been written and released. But, you know, it's not for us to say that you shouldn't do what you want to do with the story. Just like when they release something for Call of Cthulhu, for example, and people run it in Kult, or vice versa. A lot of people have come forward saying that they picked a scenario for Kult and ran it using Call of Cthulhu or World of Darkness rule system, and it's okay. I mean, so long you play Kult, that's okay. We want more Kult in the world because we're fans, we're passionate about it, like deeply passionate about it. So yeah, I hope this answers the question. Maybe that's not the most satisfying answer, but I guess it's the truth,
Yeah. I mean, if you are... Sorry, go on.
Even for this GM guide, we have this idea that we want to allow people to do things and always be stealing and being naked and be changing.
Yeah.
But this might not resonate with everyone. Someone might be bothered. Well, I feel like someone definitely is bored with me saying that I improvise everything, but it's the truth. That's my vision. Same as you will pick some, writer that always comes back to Kult and realize that their stories they don't hit the spot for you, and it's okay. There are a billion other writers contributing to Kult, and it's fine.
Yeah. If you are a RPG purist, if you believe things should be run the way that they're written, mechanics and scenarios, that is okay. We're not saying that that's a bad thing. You should GM the way that you want to GM. Absolutely, 100%. And also, I guess to get to your question, David, like, inspiration is inspiration, right? Like, it is release, and yeah, you said this, Gabe, like, once you release art into the world, every single person is going to see that piece of art through their own experiences, through their own filter of interpretation for that piece of art. So even if two GMs read the same scenario and run it the way they think it is written on the pages, they will still get two different ways of running it. There will still be differences because you cannot account for every GM's interpretation of the piece of art. And so, yeah, I would say you are releasing art. If you're writing a scenario and you release it to the world, you are releasing it from your own interpretation, because everybody is going to see that scenario through their own lens. And if you really want people to run it the way that you want it run, you probably have to write like line by line script. You're basically writing a script is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And you just have to be aware that I think a lot of GMs, this conversation of GMs included, is probably not going to be too happy about getting a script for a scenario and trying to run it. So,
and in defense of different ways and to run cult and just differences between writers and authors and all that, Scarlet Bride, written by Petter, that is the mind behind Cult, like Divinity Lost. I would never in a million years think of running that in a game, bring my players and do that. I am in love with Limbo, like famously known as the dream dude who's always using Limbo as an excuse to do anything in Cult. But I would never think of what if Cult, but Alice in the Wonderland, but Cult. But it's the fairy tales, the world of fairy tales. It's in the core rules, but it's not something that draws my attention. But Petter had a vision. He had this idea of what could happen in this dream world and how to get to this feeling with the deck of cards and all that. And he went there and did it. And I might run Scarlet Bride at some point. It's not something that draws me. And if I ever run it, maybe I will change some things, or maybe I won't. But I think that's the beauty of scenarios, right? It's a way for us, like Helmgast, to communicate that yes, you can do Alice in the Wonderland, but Cult. Yes, you can do near future religious dystopia, but Cult. Yes, you can do investigation, but Cult. So different ways to see it and experience it, and that's actually quite nice. And being a writer, being this artist person, I realized that artists have to have a big enough ego to put their heart into something and have the guts to release it and let the world see how they think and feel, and what's your vision of things. In Cult, that's your vision of Cult. That's your vision on how to run things. But you have to have not enough ego that when someone sees your work, not only Cult, but anywhere, and they say, yeah, that's not it. That's a bad implementation of the system, and you have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Or double down and have this huge ego that you say, no, you're wrong. And it's okay, but you have to be unaffected, right?
And then
Otherwise,
you have a social media fight and
yeah,
capital letters, text fight.
Otherwise, you'll never release anything whatsoever to any extent, not only in Cult, but anything, any writing, drawing, painting, whatever, music, whatever. You just have to want to show people how you see and do things. And that's okay. And it's okay that not everyone resonates with all the scenarios. And some people will come forward saying, yeah, I don't like how they do it in The Shunned. I don't like how they do it in The Black Madonna. It's okay. It's okay. You can do it differently. It's completely fine.
I think maybe to come back to our guide idea. One of the things that when you read pre-written scenarios, like obviously you're already looking for something as an inspiration or as a scenario that you want to run, and try to find something that resonates with you. And then as we discussed various options to kind of analyze the scenario, but the most helpful, at least in my perspective, is to read the scenario once, from cover to cover, and let it digest a bit. Think about, like, over a day or two, like, what did you like? What did you like? What didn't you like? How to kind of work with the scenario or with the group of friends. If you haven't set up a group, then just think about and play through in your head. If you would be a player, what would you do? How would you kind of react in certain situations? What would be interesting in the story? And I think from there, I would ask you, what is kind of like the minimal, I mean, I know you both as well, but like, what is at least something that you would suggest for people that maybe pick up scenarios the first time? What should they actually be keeping notes of? Because the scenario itself, it is already kind of the core concept, the structure of that tale that you're telling. But what is maybe good to write down as additional notes in preparation for running a game, if you would have to say or recommend something? Don't say improv, Gabe.
If it's if it's a scene by scene kind of scenario, and you really want to prepare for that, you should probably have a description, like two-liner for each scene, so you don't, and maybe a page that you can quickly go to. So for each scene and what's supposed to happen in there, or what do you want to extract out of it. So a hook and the main objective. That's what you want to do, right? This is like a skeleton that you can fall on. And what kinds of characters you have and maybe where they should be. So for Oakwood Heights, you could write like the first scene, like page, whatever. We're at the station. They should feel this pressure of the case. How can I do that? Oh, smoke in the air, like news of it, like playing silently on the television and all that. Then you can have like this bullet points just to remind you of the atmosphere. And the characters, you can write them down as Crystal and David. Erratic couple should inspire fear. And then some bullet points: bloody clothes, crazy eyes, stuff like that. That's what I would do
Are
generally.
you just describing us, or what's going on?
Yeah, that's what I see beyond the veil. Yes. That's what I would do. For open, like campaign frameworks, like Brixton, the Hour of the Flame that's about to be released. You can do the same, but they don't have specific scenes, right? So you should be preparing what kinds of scenes you want to have. So if you take Brixton, and that's free so you can reference as we talk about, and you're gonna feature the Joy Boys nightclub. There's a list of events there. Actually, for any location, there's a list of events that can happen at the place. That's usually, and obviously that's super developed because that's a final release, but that's somehow-ish how you should be doing it. So instead of a full description, you would have events beyond the veil at the nightclub. Crystal vanishes on a second glance. She's not there. And you don't place it anywhere. You just have it in front of you. You know that Crystal must vanish because that's fun. When? You don't know. You'll see when you get there. David will be hungry for blood. When? Maybe you get a trigger for that when he is angry, But that's the general idea. Gabe will be scared, and we'll see how they look beyond the veil. When? You don't know. Bullet point. You bring that into the game when the situation, the opening presents itself. And the same would go for the nightclub, what you want to bring. to the forefront? Like, what do you want to say about it? If it's packed, if it's empty, if it's fancy or shady, like seedy, dingy, slimy place, or if it's like you have crystal chandeliers and people in tuxedos and, like
Yeah.
glasses of wine clinking in the background and, the rich person laughter. So bullet points. That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And you can do that fairly easily just by looking at the page with the location or character and highlighting the text if it's a PDF, or opening your notepad and taking notes, just as you would like studying anything. But how do you do it, Crystal?
Yeah. I agree with what you said. In addition, depending on the type of scenario, so if there is an element of when it's important when things happen, like dates, times, or like just a sequence of events when things are triggered, it might be good to just have that as notes as well, just to make sure that you can reference those things easily. Plus, if your player characters are doing something, they're doing whatever they're doing within the story, but then in the background there's a sequence of events happening by the adversaries or other factions or beings. Having a good idea of when those things are happening within the fiction is also good to have at a glance, probably. And yeah, if you're doing a longer scenario, then I usually write down a couple of, so like depending on what happened in the last session, and especially if you have like dramatic hooks and things that your characters have explained that they wanted to do, definitely have, scenes written down or notes written down for what you want to do in order to resolve the things that your player characters want to do. And yeah, that's kind of the function of downtime, right? You are thinking about what is happening next in the story. And that's kind of it. Honestly, I don't make too many notes. Like, I used to be sort of a neurotic note taker when it came to scenarios, but now it's become less so the more experienced I've become.
Same.
Yeah.
And you, David?
Well, when it comes to my note taking, I guess I do a very simple list of just their names, because I'm most likely having issue with names to be breaking the narrative. So write down the names, their occupation, and like maybe a short sentence of a description, or I find images of movies or whatever inspirational media that I take, and place that picture with my NPC. And especially in campaigns, that helps because it can be tiresome to kind of take notes. So there are various programs or notebooks. You can just even use like a word or typesetting program where you can have those pictures with a name and a rough description. So, or if you want to go the extra mile, you print out little, pictures with on the back whatever information is written on them. But technically, that is often a bit too much. It does help if you play with on tables in person. If you have like printouts of like characters or something, because then you can just put the picture in front of them and continue with just the narrative, because everybody can see what they look like, so you don't need to describe for like 30, 40 seconds. But my main thing is that once I read the scenario, I wrote down the names, the NPCs, the main locations, I will make a few lines of what the core element, like in literally elevator pitches, break down what the story is about. So if somebody asked me afterwards, like, what was the story about, I want to have that one sentence ready, basically telling myself that I understood the narrative of the story and what I want to play. Once that is done, I will add often like a few sentences of inspirational media and stuff that I think would work fine. So like, I imagine playing this scenario, but like we're playing it as if it was in Blade Runner universe, and like I know exactly what the atmosphere looks like and how the streets looks like and stuff. So I have a reference in my head which movie is playing. So when I narrate the story, it basically stays within that kind of realm. Kind of focus on the inspirational media and make sure that I have my film running in my head. That was it.
I think this is another area where you need to try to be a little self-aware and understand the things that you have issues remembering, the things that you have difficulty describing, the things that that the notes would actually help you with. Because like if you are, like David was saying, like he writes down names because he has a hard time remembering the names of people and then having like a short description so that he doesn't have to take a lot of brain space to like just have a description of an NPC or a location and just have it at the ready. If you are good at that, then that's probably not something you want to waste note space on. You probably just, you can see like, oh, the location is this. I know how to describe that. Otherwise, if you have an issue with thinking of beats to the story or what sequence things happen or whatever it may be, you should take notes on the things that you need notes for. And then, obviously have the scenario handy as a reference and then use your notes as a sort of crutch to help you with anything else that you need. But yeah, self-awareness as a GM is helpful. And yeah.
I guess one thing I want to mention regarding digital elements as well. So I personally love to have background music and ambient sounds. So like I often spend more time looking for the music that I'm going to play in the background rather than on the scenario prep itself. But it helps me, in a sense, if I listen to a soundtrack in my preparations while I kind of read the scenario or prep the character elements, or since I use a VTT, I kind of just make sure that the handouts, if there are handouts, or other elements are there, that my collective notes are kind of together, either in my brain or in my cloud space. It is easy for me then during the game to listen on the musical cues, like that changes now to a more dramatic tone. So like, oh, right, now I want it to be there. So like I accelerate the story to kind of come to my next beat. And often I realize by now I'm also influenced subconsciously by the music. that I change the narrative fitting to the music style, and it works without me even having to think about it. And it kind of takes for me a load of my mind to kind of think about when, where, what is happening, because certain tracks are like 4 hours long, so perfect for a game, including a break. Wonderful. But I do want to say that it can be overburdening for some people if you run a scenario for the first time, or you just switch systems and you want to run Kult. It can be a lot dealing with like VTTs and dice rollers and music and scene changes, maps and handouts. Try to be on that point very self-cautious, because I feel like nothing breaks the story more than when the GM basically stops the game every 5 minutes because he's like, oh, I know I have the handout somewhere. Oh no, it's here. Or like it's I can't find the sound for this. I need to do this. Think about that, and if you don't find the handout, just tell them what they find in the handout. What is the main clue that the handout provides? Well, you find out that the location of the murder was at XYZ.
Good. Should we use the final stretch to talk about writing a scenario?
Yeah. Let's do it.
I'll do my quick fire here. That's what I usually tell people writing scenarios. People that haven't, they never wrote for Kult before, but also generally for anything. What you should do, I feel, is have a strong premise. You should have characters, if you want to have pre-gens, that relate to that have something to say about this premise. They show something unique about it. Or you should have guidance on how to create characters that evoke this premise of yours, what you want to tell about the story. And one of the commandments about of writing for Kult is you should write with love about something that speaks to you. You have to, not that you have to make a manifesto and get people to see the world as you do, but you should have something to say. Even if it's not super deep, you should have a goal here. Horror, and this is not written in the commandments, but horror, it is a way, just like sci-fi, to explore what's happening right now in the world with us, but we extrapolate a bit and tell things through allegories and metaphors and all that. And so your locations, your creatures, your problems, your whatever you want to feature in the scenario, they should be saying something about something. And you should write that with love. You don't want to just do something for the sake of doing something. You don't want to have gore for the sake of having gore, murder, or whatever. You don't have to even have those things. But whatever you do have, write that with respect and love. Respect to the people that you're writing for. You have to respect that they will understand or try to understand what you want to convey. You have to respect that they also come or could come from particularly difficult backgrounds. So you have to be mindful of that. And you don't want to be like super like in your face about things. You don't want to be like this edgelord kind of writer. But you also don't want to shy away from difficult topics. So write them with love. Write something that retains your interest, that piques your attention, yours first. But how do you go about it? I would say that if it's your first scenario ever, write one location and one problem, one location and one adversary, something that is happening and something that the characters can take care of. And this could be the end of the scenario, or it could flow into another location. But for each location, you want to have a specific, worthy of being, remembered, like a memorable scene you want to have in each of them. So picture it like a movie, what a cool scene would look like, and then you write that. And then you adjust. If you want it to be railroady, you do so. You write scene by scene what should happen in the story. Otherwise, leave open hooks to further scenes and all that. I advise you to write as little as possible of anything. So if you have one location and you want to describe each of the rooms, try to do that like in 2 lines. Try to do that in 3 lines. If you can't do that, then cut away until you have like one location, one area of the location, like one room in the house that is memorable, that you want something to happen inside, or have a smaller location, like fewer rooms, but you develop them a bit more. But be mindful that each room, the more you write about it, the longer it takes to experience it. So if you want players to move from one place to the next, like one room to the other, don't spend too much time. Just say what's in there, and then that's it. For creatures, there's a whole writing creatures and the core rules. The gist of it is that they should have an agenda, like a good agenda that won't evolve, at least not always, into fighting, because those creatures also have, love for their lives, even if they don't comprehend it as we do, but they also feel pain and fear. Probably, if they don't, maybe consider writing, at least at first, one creature that does feel those things. And then call it a day. If you want to really get into the professionalism of writing for publication, jot down ideas like one-liners. So this room, blood, murder. This room, clue about David. This room, clue about Crystal. This room, gateway, like dormant, blocked gateway to Metropolis. And then leave it at that. And then you have this overview of everything, the whole location. And then you can go in later and develop things. But having a skeleton, like a foundation, is much easier than a full scenario. And this is like a beginner's tip here, like for beginners specifically. Don't write anything whatsoever for any game as you would read it. So if you're writing a scenario, what I see beginners doing is that they will have an overview, then they have a background for the story, and then they have themes. And in the themes, they are writing, in this story, this happens, and this is, they're like writing about something that isn't even in the pages, right? And game master tips, you haven't even started the scenario, but you're writing game master tips. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be writing the scenario instead. So don't go about it like page by page as a scenario is released. The hard truth about the scenario is that oftentimes you begin at the first scene and then you move to the next, and then you write an ending, and then you go back to development and you realize you need a hook for that scene, and then you're writing that, and then you keep going back and forth. And at the end, you most likely don't have what you thought you would have.
Yeah.
And you don't want the burden of having everything and then going back and reading your introduction and your game master tips and themes,
Yep.
for the scenario, and realizing, oh, I've never even actually thought about adding madness, so I should take out this paragraph. But you were super, like at the first steps, you were super into it and writing, oh, this will handle madness in this and that way, and this and that way. You can use that as a guideline, but
yeah,
don't do that. Really focus on a skeleton, and then you can write advice and all that. That's my writing scenarios. Yep.
A couple things. So when I'm playing games, I say that I don't have lines and veils, but I also don't be an edgelord. Like, that's my line, really, is having extreme content, extreme, horrific content that has no context within the story is kind of my line or veil, or whatever you want to call it. Like I'm okay with more extreme content, but if it's just in there to get a rise and there's not really a whole lot of purpose in this within the greater story, I'm kind of like, I'm not offended. I'm just like, that was like, that's nothing. That doesn't, like, that's not horror, to me, at least. So, yeah, horror is using these content, but attaching emotions and people to them and creating a story from those emotions. Like, when you watch a movie that is just, like, I think of like the later Saw movies. They're just torture porn, and like there's no actual attachment of the torturing to a story or to emotions, or to, like, I don't care about these characters, and therefore I don't really care that they're being tortured. And yeah, so there's that part of that. I also, for writing scenarios, what was my thought? Oh, I had another thought and I forgot it. David, you can go ahead.
So I think I acknowledge and like all the points that you raised so far, but I think a bit, maybe Chris and I have been doing a couple of like scenario workshops on the Illusion HorrorCon server over the years, at cons as well. And it basically just takes our experience for putting our ideas into notes that resemble pretty much a scenario structure. And I think the final product of our workshops is something that is more like what you said, Gabe. It's a loose structure of ideas that are equivalent to a scenario script. It is not the final version of it. It is a guideline and a draft of what a scenario is about. And at least in when I've been doing these workshops, and it's independent if it's a gothic horror investigative scenario, if it's a more cosmic horror, if it's a agnostic horror. They vary in specific ways, that is clear, but since we're focusing on cult, one of the things that you might have noticed when you read the core rulebook or published scenarios in general, they are often framed quite loosely. They are open-ended and question-based, rather than explicitly stating, this will happen after this. In a sense, this also happens, but it's the consequential nature of the scenario is not dependent upon an escalation meter or something. The escalation is the player's action throughout the scenario. And it is more how their interaction with the scenario will shape the next stage of the escalation or the timing plan. When writing down a concept for a scenario that you want to kind of put together, I go back to what I said earlier, and that is one of the major things that if you want to write down something, and even if it's notes and stuff, that's all good and nice, but one of the most helpful aspects shaping the writing of your story is that you have a clear concept of what the scenario, what the story should be about, independent of the actors and the NPCs and the themes and whatever involved as of now. But like in one sentence, in an elevator pitch, that's what I'm asking always, what should the story be about? And if you don't have an answer to that yet, then try to frame it in short bursts of answers instead. So you say like, it should be about a cult in the forest. And then you think it should be about a cult in the forest. That's your first statement. It's about a ritual that goes wrong. Second sentence. And
What does the cult want?
Yeah, because the cult wants to overthrow the government or something. So now you have 3 single lines, and as of now, it might not be giving you the full picture of the scenario, but it now helps you to go to the next stage of developing kind of the themes and the core elements that how the scenario should be. Should it be, it's a cult in a forest, so will this involve like isolation? Will this involve like survival horror? Will this go more into like maybe investigation? Or do I want like pulp action? You know that they're there. You go in full military style or commando style, and you just like diminish them all. What is the kind of overlying theme, and maybe even what tropes do you want to use? So how do you want to go into the story? Should it be more, is it the secret cult trope in itself, or is it the hidden cult within normal society, a suburban type? With these 2 concepts, the premise sections, and then flushing out your themes by going through these 3 lines that you had before, or 4 lines, how many lines you had before, you will start now to begin to set the framework for the rest of your scenarios, because that will ultimately give you, working with these 2 elements back and forth, again, as Gabe said, keep it short, keep it 1 sentence, answer it basically in a table if you want to, but keep the themes, the tropes, and the core premise as brief as possible, because when you then read them over and over again and correlate them, you can ask questions. So who will be actually like the main antagonists in this whole thing? Will it be the cult itself? Are they serving a higher entity, a being from the underworld?
Manipulated by
Are they manipulated?
a being? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And with that in mind, you will slowly but steadily flush out exactly these parts of the story that you may be unsure of, that you have ideas for, but you have not had a cohesive thought to it. And I know there are different ways. People have other ideas of writing it. I just found for myself, this helped me the best and the most reliable one, not only in writing scenarios, but also prepping scenarios. So like if I read a published scenarios, I reconstruct mostly in my head these things. What is the scenario about? I get my elevator pitch. What are the themes of the scenario? Cool, these are these and this. And they will guide me then running the scenario. I know who the antagonist is. I know how the players will be introduced into the scenario. I know what kind of happens, what are the beats that kind of will transpire in this. And then I keep the word clue here, but like it is not a clue as in the sense of an investigative gumshoe-like clue. It can be a hint, a lead, an investigative element that will guide you to the next beat.
An exposure of the
Exactly.
illusion or what is, or actual reality.
Exactly. And so with then asking, like, how do I connect A, B, C? So how do I connect the premise with the characters? How do I connect the antagonist with the characters? You can fill out these clues or leads, and you can connect those. And surely but efficiently, you will create the web underlying your scenario that will outline pretty much the premise in a concise and consistent way. Because then when you have these elements set, you go in and you start to expand on this. You can describe the locations. You can think about what is unique about the locations, what is unique about the antagonist, what is unique about the cult. And you can write out these elements, but they will be all in, at least in my case, in a mindset of, I understand the web, I understand how everything is connected and why I need to add this. And then you will realize that sometimes you thought about adding this massive like warehouse and you wanted to have an angel appear. And then you realize that, well, it just doesn't add into any of these elements at the moment. So maybe I just leave it out and focus on this part. Having a very clear understanding of your core concept. And if you can't frame your story in an elevator pitch, meaning in 5 sentences or less, then you need to continue working on that. Because if the longer you work on a scenario, and that is often the issue that leads people to continuously write and write and write and never stop, that they don't have a clear goal in this. And it is often also difficult to begin writing in the first place, but like asking these simple questions, identifying the premise, the themes, and then how from these elements to expand further will help you keep these aspects together cohesively with the narrative that you want to tell, without going overboard and adding elements to the narrative or the story that you don't even have to. And I would even say and recommend, once you have the core concept outlined, as I described, don't even write further, but take this and playtest. Do a playtest.
Run it.
It's going to be as rough as it can be. You don't have any all the names yet. You don't have this and this. But you know the premise. You know what's going to happen in your story. And make it happen so that your story comes true. If it doesn't, then make a note and adjust it or run it again and see if it's just the group or if it was really the narrative that happened to guide the players in the same way. And then keep on iterating. But yeah, don't write out the whole thing from the get-go. Rather have a loose construct, but have a clear and understandable construct. It needs to be ideally on a 1 page, so that if you put it away for a couple of months, you pick it up and you read this 1 page, it should be enough that you remember exactly what the scenario is about, how to run it, and what is happening in it. And if you have this, run it, playtest it a couple of times, and then sit down and write the locations up, write up the antagonists, write up the elements that are coming to the story. But don't start writing out 50 pages of this will happen and this will happen and then this comes into play. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, beautifully said. No, go on, Crystal.
That was kind of the point that I had forgotten, but now I remember it. You are not writing a literary story. from beginning to end, because you actually don't really know what's going to happen when you run this. At least not everything. This is not a story that you, like, if you want to write a story, and then you can dictate all the things that happen in that story. Scenarios, you don't dictate every single thing that happens in the scenario. You have player characters, you have your characters in the story, and you have a central problem, and then maybe auxiliary problems. But if you're a beginner, you have a central problem and a central sort of adversary that is going against the player characters. And you write that central problem and the things that are attached to that. And then and I agree with David, you take that, that skeleton of your narrative and present it to actual players and see what comes up. And that will, playtesting helps you fill in the gaps of whatever you can, should, need to write. But yeah, don't write a story from beginning to end, because that's just a story. That's a story that you dictate everything that happens. I feel like I run into a lot of writers who want to write a scenario and then they end up writing, well, your players should find this. Your players should go here. From here, they should go here. And it's like, no. Now you're just telling players what to do, and that's not fun. That is actual railroading. Railroading is when you have a story that you are telling players what to do. When you have to sort of lead and encourage players to do things in order to figure out what's going on, I wouldn't consider that railroading. I just consider that you arbitrating, being the game master of the narrative.
I have some final words, and maybe this is the best for last, I think, but I feel like if you, the listener, stuck all the way to this moment, you're kind of looking for this also. But so, a bunch of things. First, if you want to look at someone's work, okay, so I need a fan who doesn't write long scenarios and publishes their own things like fan-made material for free online. Martin, the man also doing the Black Madonna guide, he is a machine of short scenarios, like a machine.
Absolutely.
Dude's like a Techron of the keyboard, weaving stories. And they are super short in the sense that I feel like most are meant to be run as one-shots, like one night. They all have a strong premise, and they have their differences, between, each other, but it's a good model to try to mimic. Second, if you're trying to write for publication, each publisher, each creative director will have their own do's and don'ts for whatever material they want to release. So if you want to write for Kult, we're going to have things that we are looking to feature in a scenario. But if you're writing for Call of Cthulhu, that might be a whole different deal. And that goes for anyone else, anywhere, anyhow, whatever. So if you want to really write something for publication, seek the people you want to write for and see what they want. See if you have what they're looking for. See if you can devote this much time. The RPG industry is a bit tricky when it comes to, actually publishing things. It takes a lot of time. and each game gets their own treatment. So I won't say for others, but for Kult, it does take a long time to refine some ideas and even longer to publish. If you've never written a scenario, it'll be difficult to put yourself out there as this freelance writer for pretty much any company, you know? So having this portfolio of fan things you've written, having writing samples is best. But provided, you want to write in the typical Kult style, and this is the guideline I'm using right now. 1,000 words is 1 page. If you can get a location with something to be solved whatsoever, like a clue to be found behind some kind of danger or whatever, if you can get that in less than 1,000 words, you've already nailed it. You should probably be writing like professionally. If it's short, to the point, you give people freedom to change things around, and you give players freedom to explore and do what they want in the location, but still get to the point you want them to be at, then you've nailed it. It's fine. But a good exercise would be to get in 1,000 words a location that the game master can use for whatever kind of story they're telling. And this is what we've done for the Illusion and the Borderlands. There's a bunch of locations spread around the book, all of them in 1 page. That was the idea. If you get the book, obviously, you'll see that they have a backstory. They have some locations that you can go and see, and then they have like NPCs sort of like described, like quick fire, and then hooks and events. Some are super like long. Some have this like 2 hooks that serve as the basis for a full story, maybe, or like the beginning of a campaign. But then some are like quicker events inside a location. If you can do that, you can do more locations for a scenario. And if you can do like 2 or 3 locations, then you already have a scenario if you manage to interlink those. And this is the structure of Oakwood Heights. 2 locations, stuff to see, stuff to experience, a greater truth that you unveil at the end, and then that's it. And we come to this last word. How long should be the descriptions? If you look at Oakwood Heights specifically, and also the first scene of Black Skies Over Brixton, I feel that's a good scene to look at, the murder scene. You see that individual descriptions and experiences, even through the veil, they are very quick, like 30 words, maybe less. So stuff you can see like in 10 words that the GM can look and read to the players or get an idea. If you can get like bullet points, like timed experiences, like, well, when they enter the room, this happens outside of the room, like the things that like you create a system in the place. The general description of the location, it helps to be around like 200 words or so. It can be more, it can be less sometimes. Individual events, less than that. Also half of that, a third of that even. Descriptions of NPCs, like a third of that. You don't want an NPC to be more described, to have more words than the location and events, because people tend not to over describe NPCs. They won't be talking about hair and clothes and individual details. They won't be about that most of the time. So this crazy eye person, you can even take the templates from the archetypes that they have, like eyes, body, like clothes, whatever, and mix and match, and you have a full NPC already.
Yeah.
Their agendas, it should be clear in a couple of lines. So if a line has 10 to 20 words, their agenda should be around 100 words if it's super important. Otherwise, if it's just an obstacle, it can be, oh, he wants to lie and get away with some money. That's okay. That's enough guidance, I feel. And that's it. That's a good exercise to write a compelling location. You can look at the locations from Brixton. They are also like 1-ish pages with events and all that. And Unto Death also has 1-page locations. Together Unto Death, both are released for free. Till Death Do Us Part also has like strong locations with bullet points, like the house you venture into, and you have this sort of ghost-like appearances. Good one, Oakwood Heights, obviously. And then my last point, if you're looking for a hardcore writing exercise, horror starters, they look simple, but the beauty of simplicity is that they feel simple because whoever wrote them did a good job. If you have a strong premise and 3 questions with 3 options each, that's hella difficult because the options, they should work with whatever else the person has chosen, and staying in theme and in cult and evoking like a strong starting point. It's very difficult, but it can be very rewarding. So obviously we have the driver that you can use as inspiration. The simplicity of the driver can be replicated. So the player is getting somewhere, something awful has happened, and they have something to their advantage. Done. You can add to that, but the more you add, the longer the setup phase takes from the role-playing experience. If you look at Broken Reflections, some scenarios like A Day in the Love Life, they are mostly questions, and you get to develop individual scenes after the questions. The same happens for Dreams Carved from Flesh, and I think The Mother. So you have the question, you allow some time to think about them, and then you build scenes right away. But I would say to begin at the driver sort of structure. That's my final words. How long should be the question, and the amount of words for answers mimic the driver. Question should be small. Answers should be just enough. Just enough to get an idea. And yeah, that's it. If you're looking to write for Cult, you can reach out to my Harold email. That's harold@helmcast.se in the description. Do look at Martin's scenarios, one-shots, in the description, please.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, we'll put them in the description.
Beautiful work by Martin. And yeah, that's it for me. Check the free scenarios from Cultmas. And the last scenario is action investigation-ish thing. Super simple, also strong locations. It's Frozen Moments from the first edition of Cult, or second, I think. I don't remember now. Also good with bullet points for events and all that. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. I think David mentioned this earlier, but I'll reiterate. Read scenarios. And like, if you want to write scenarios, read scenarios. Take note of the elements that are part of the scenarios. Also, take note of the things that make scenarios easier to run for yourself. And maybe ask other GMs, like, what is it about certain scenarios that make it easier or harder to run them? And go from there. Like anything, when you are an artist, you need to study your art, and reading scenarios is a part of that. And running games, obviously, but mostly, yeah, just read what you want to write.
And
Even as a nice exercise, write a location for the scenarios you are reading. You know,
Absolutely.
revamp them, whatever.
And I would like to lastly add that if writers provide a way of contacting them, or you find them somewhere, ask them if you can ask them a couple questions that you have about the scenario. Most writers will be happy to share their thoughts and ideas. Look for actual plays of a scenario as an inspiration. Again, inspiration. People will run it in 100 different ways.
Especially if they were run by the writer.
Exactly. And yeah, there are people behind these magnificent publications, but they are people nonetheless. And they're often just waiting to hear somebody asking questions because they realize somebody's interested in their work. So I don't speak for everyone. Don't contact people unsolicited, but if they provide a way of contacting them, or they say they can be contacted, please do, because they most likely will help you guide through questions that you have that nobody else will answer.
Well,
Good.
Yeah.
I think
There it is.
That is the end of today's episode. I guess, as always, if you have questions, we have a form connected. If you like us, feel free to share us and recommend us to people. And
like and subscribe and join all the
smash
stuff.
that like button.
Smash it. Murder
Join
it.
the member area. Oh, we don't have members area.
Not yet.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I guess see you next time then.
Bye.